My husband Marcus planned to divorce me on our 5th anniversary and leave me homeless, but he forgot one crucial detail. I am the one who paid for the house he thinks he owns. By the time he served me the papers in front of his smug family, I had already moved every cent we had to an offshore account and transferred the deed of our mansion to a corporation he had never heard of. He thought he was discarding a broken woman, but he was actually handing the keys to his destruction to a shark. Before I tell you how I left him with exactly $12 to his name, please tell me where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who you are. My name is Sophia, and for 5 years I played the role of the supportive wife to Dr. Marcus Brooks, one of Atlanta's most rising plastic surgeons. To the outside world, and especially to his judgmental family, I was just Sophia, the quiet woman who managed the household while Marcus saved lives and made millions. His sister Ashley never missed a chance to remind me of my place. She would smile that tight, condescending smile and introduce me as Marcus's domestic goddess, implying I was nothing more than a glorified maid who got lucky. I never corrected her. I never told them that while Marcus was fixing noses, I was fixing distressed companies and acquiring commercial real estate. I liked being underestimated. It was a strategic advantage. But last Tuesday, that advantage turned into a weapon. I was in my home office reviewing the acquisition of a failing logistics firm when I pulled up the security feed on my second monitor. I just wanted to check on Barnaby, our golden retriever, who had been recovering from surgery. The camera in the living room was high definition, and the audio was crystal clear. I saw Marcus walking in, but he wasn't alone. Ashley was with him, pacing around my living room with her shoes on the white rug I had explicitly asked everyone to avoid. "You have to do it this Friday," Ashley said, her voice echoing slightly in the high ceiling room. "The anniversary party is the perfect cover. Everyone will be there, Mom, Dad, and all our cousins. If you serve her the papers publicly, she will be too humiliated to make a scene. She will just sign and leave." My fingers froze over the keyboard. I watched my husband pour himself a drink from the crystal decanter I had bought him for his promotion. He took a long sip and sighed. "I know, Ashley, but it feels brutal. 5 years is a long time. And she has been loyal." "Loyal does not pay the bills," Ashley snapped. "Listen to me. Your practice is taking off. You are about to become a partner. Do you really want to share half of your future equity with her? With someone who just sits at home all day?" Mom is right. Sophia was fine for your residency years, but you have outgrown her. You need someone who fits the image of a top surgeon. Someone like Jessica. Hearing the name Jessica felt like a physical blow to my chest. Jessica was his head nurse, 24 years old, with a laugh that was too loud and skirts that were too short. I had suspected something for months, but hearing him confirm, it was different. Marcus laughed, a sound that made my stomach turn. "Jessica is definitely more fun. And she understands the pressure of my work. Sophia is just so boring lately, always talking about investments and savings. It is exhausting." "Exactly," Ashley said, clapping her hands together. "So it is settled. The lawyer said, if you file now and claim the house was purchased with your premarital savings, which we can fudge, you can kick her out immediately. The prenup she signed without reading closely is ironclad. She gets nothing, Marcus. No alimony, no house, just her clothes." I watched Marcus smile. That arrogant, self-satisfied smile that I used to think was charming. "Fine," he said. "I will do it Friday. I will give her the divorce papers instead of the diamond earrings she is expecting. It will be a clean break. Goodbye, Sophia." "Hello, freedom." They clinked glasses, my husband and his sister toasting to my destruction in the home I paid for. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt a cold calm wash over me, a sensation I only felt when I was closing a multi-million-dollar deal. They thought I was a helpless housewife who signed a prenup without reading it. They were wrong. I had read every word. And I knew something they didn't. The prenup protected premarital assets, but everything earned and acquired during the marriage was shared unless it was placed in a trust. and the house. That beautiful $3 million estate in Buckhead, Marcus thought he paid the mortgage because the money came from our joint account. He forgot that I was the one who filled that joint account every month using structured deposits from my consulting firm, which he never bothered to ask about. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had on speed dial. Vance. It is Sophia. Sophia. My lawyer's voice was rough. He sounded surprised. It is Tuesday. We usually talk strategy on Thursdays. Is the acquisition in trouble? The acquisition is fine, I said, keeping my voice steady. But I need to execute a Protocol 0 on my personal assets, immediately. There was a pause on the line. Vance knew what Protocol 0 meant. It was the nuclear option. Total asset protection. Scorched earth. Are you sure? Sophia Vance asked, his tone shifting from casual to professional. Once we pull this trigger, there is no going back. The IRS flags will trigger audits on anyone connected to you, and the freeze will be absolute. I am looking at my husband plotting to leave me homeless on Friday, I said, watching Marcus on the screen as he laughed at something Ashley said. Execute it, Vance. I want the house transferred to the Nemesis Holdings LLC in Nevada. Use the quitclaim deed I signed 3 years ago, the one Marcus signed thinking it was an insurance rider. Done. Vance said. I could hear his keyboard clacking furiously in the background. What about the liquid assets? Drain it, I said. The joint checking, the savings, the investment portfolio he thinks he manages. Move it all to the irrevocable trust in my mother's name. Leave him exactly $12. $12? Vance asked. Yes. That is the cost of an Uber to his mother's house. He is going to need it. I hung up the phone. On the screen, Marcus was checking his watch. I have to go back to the clinic, he told Ashley. Jessica is waiting. Go, Ashley said, kissing him on the cheek. I will handle the catering for Friday. Make sure you look surprised when you give her the papers. I turned off the monitor. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm. They wanted a show on Friday. I would give them a show. For the next 48 hours, I moved like a ghost in my own house. I cooked dinner. I asked Marcus about his day. I even ironed his shirt for the clinic. I watched him lie to my face over and over again. Every time he said, "I love you, babe," I mentally transferred another $10,000 out of his reach. By Friday afternoon, the transfer was complete. My phone buzzed with a notification from Vance. Asset transfer confirmed. The deed is recorded in Nevada. You are officially a tenant in your own home renting from a company you own, and the bank accounts are empty. Good luck tonight, Sophia. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. I was wearing a blood-red dress that fit like a second skin. I put on the diamond necklace I had bought for myself last year, the one Marcus thought was fake costume jewelry. I heard Marcus downstairs shouting, "Babe, are you ready? We cannot be late. Ashley is waiting." I picked up my clutch. Inside was not a gift for my husband, but a copy of the lease agreement for Nemesis Holdings, LLC. I am coming. Darling, I called out. I walked down the stairs, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Marcus looked up at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Maybe he sensed the predator in the room. But then he checked his watch, and the arrogance returned. You look fine, he said dismissively. Let's go. I smiled. It was the last time he would ever see me smile at him. Let's go celebrate, I said. As we got into his Porsche, he didn't notice that his wallet sitting in the center console was lighter than usual. He didn't know that the black card tucked inside was already dead plastic. He drove us to the restaurant, humming along to the radio, thinking he was driving toward his freedom. He had no idea he was driving straight off a cliff. The restaurant Marcus chose for our annihilation was Le Monde, an establishment so pretentiously exclusive that getting a reservation required a background check and a donation to the mayor's re-election campaign. As we walked in, the hostess greeted Marcus by name, her eyes lingering on his bespoke suit, while barely acknowledging my presence. This was his arena, or so he thought. He walked with the swagger of a man who believed he owned the world, unaware that his credit rating had just dropped below sea level. We were led to a private dining room at the back surrounded by walls of glass that overlooked the Atlanta skyline. His entire family was already there. His mother Eleanor sat at the head of the table like a deposed queen, her pearls clutching her neck as if they were gasping for air. His father Arthur was already nursing a scotch, avoiding eye contact. And then there was Ashley sitting next to an empty chair reserved for Marcus, creating a physical barrier between my husband and me before we had even sat down. When I took my seat at the far end of the table, the isolation was palpable. I was the black sheep, quite literally, in a sea of beige linen and old money arrogance. Ashley smiled at me, a predator baring its teeth. She snapped her fingers for the sommelier, not bothering to ask the rest of the table for their preferences. "Bring us 3 bottles of the Chateau Margaux 1996, she ordered, her voice loud enough to ensure the surrounding tables knew she could afford it. "And bring a glass of the house white for Sophia. I know she prefers something simpler." She turned to me, her eyes glinting with malice under the crystal chandelier. "Do not take it personally, Sophia. The Margaux has a very complex profile. It requires a refined palate to appreciate the notes of leather and tobacco. I would hate for it to be wasted on someone who does not understand its value. Drink up. You probably won't be tasting wine like this ever again." I simply folded my napkin in my lap. "Actually, I will have the sparkling water," I told the sommelier. "I want a clear head for tonight." Marcus chuckled, patting Ashley on the back. "Let her be, Ash. Tonight is a special night. Let's not ruin the mood with wine lessons." The dinner was a masterclass in exclusion. They talked about summer homes in the Hamptons, country club memberships, and people I had never met. They discussed the family trust, pointedly ignoring the fact that I had restructured their portfolio 3 years ago to save them from bankruptcy. I ate my lobster bisque in silence, watching the clock. Every bite they took, every sip of that $4,000 wine was being charged to a card that was currently as useful as a library card in a casino. When the dessert course was cleared, the air in the room shifted. The idle chatter died down. Eleanor straightened her back. Ashley smirked, pulling out her phone to record under the table. It was time. Marcus stood up, tapping his spoon against his glass. The sharp sound cut through the tension. "Family, thank you for coming," he began, flashing that camera-ready smile he used on his patients before convincing them they needed unnecessary surgery. 5 years ago, I made a decision that changed my life. I married Sophia. He looked down at me, his eyes cold and empty. "We have had some good times, but life is about growth. It is about evolving. And sometimes to grow, you have to prune the dead weight." He reached into his jacket pocket. I saw the flash of yellow manila. He didn't pull out a jewelry box. He pulled out a thick legal envelope and tossed it onto the table. It slid across the starched white tablecloth and stopped right in front of my water glass. "Happy anniversary, Sophia," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the silent room. "Those are divorce papers. I think it is time you moved on. You have 24 hours to vacate my house." The room went dead silent. Eleanor took a sip of her wine, looking bored. Arthur studied the ceiling. Ashley was practically vibrating with excitement, her phone camera aimed directly at my face, waiting for the tears, the screaming, the breakdown. They wanted the angry black woman. They wanted a scene they could gossip about at the country club for the next decade. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Marcus. I picked up the papers and slowly pulled them out. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached into my clutch and pulled out my own Mont Blanc pen. "You know, Marcus," I said, my voice steady and calm, uncapping the pen with a satisfying click. "I was actually going to file these myself last week. I had the paperwork drawn up and everything. But honestly, I was so busy shopping for new furniture for my new apartment that I just forgot. Thank you for saving me the legal fees." I signed the last page with a flourish, dated it, and slid the papers back to him. "There," I said. All yours. The smile fell off Ashley's face. Marcus looked confused. He picked up the papers, staring at my signature as if it were written in alien hieroglyphics. You are signing it. Just like that, he stammered. You don't want to read it. You get nothing, Sophia. No alimony, no house. Nothing. I stood up, smoothing down the front of my red dress. Oh, Marcus, I don't need your money. I have never needed your money. But you might want to check the expiration date on your own lifestyle before you worry about mine. I turned to the rest of the table. Eleanor, Arthur, thank you for the dinner. It was enlightening. Ashley, the wine was excellent even if your personality leaves a harsh aftertaste. I picked up my clutch and walked toward the door. The silence behind me was heavy, confused. They had expected a victim, and instead they got a ghost. Wait, Marcus called out, his ego bruised. Where are you going? We aren't done here. I didn't turn back. I am. Happy anniversary, Marcus. I walked out of the private room and signaled the waiter. He was a young man looking terrified, holding a leather bill folder. The gentleman in the back is ready for the check, I told him. Make sure to add 20% gratuity. He is feeling very generous tonight. I lingered in the lobby, hidden behind a large potted palm just close enough to see the reflection in the glass doors. I needed to see this. The waiter walked into the private room. I saw Marcus laugh loud and boisterous, trying to regain control of the room after my unexpected exit. He pulled out his black American Express card, the heavy titanium one he loved to flash, and dropped it onto the tray without looking at the bill. The waiter bowed and left. 2 minutes later he returned. He leaned down and whispered something to Marcus. Marcus frowned. He waved his hand dismissively and pushed the card back at the waiter. The waiter shook his head. I saw Marcus's face flush red. He stood up, his voice carrying out to the lobby. What do you mean declined? That is an unlimited card. Try it again. I watched as the manager was called over. I watched Marcus pull out a second card, then a third, then his debit card. Every time the waiter returned from the terminal, he looked more apologetic, and Marcus looked more frantic. Ashley was digging through her purse, but I knew for a fact her husband Lucas had drained their joint account for a gambling debt 2 days ago because I was the one who bought the debt. Eleanor and Arthur never carried cards. They thought it was vulgar. The bill was $15,000. And between the 4 of them, they didn't have enough liquid cash to pay for the valet parking. I watched the manager cross his arms. I saw the security guard step forward. Marcus was shouting now, sweating through his custom suit, pointing fingers, demanding to speak to the owner. I smiled, turned around, and walked out into the cool Atlanta night. The valet brought my car around. As I slid into the driver's seat, I saw flashing blue lights approaching in the rearview mirror. It seemed the restaurant had a strict policy about theft of services. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Call the bank. Now. Fix this. I deleted the thread, blocked the number, and drove away. The game had just begun, and I had already captured the king. It took Ashley 2 hours to sort out the bill at the restaurant. I know this because I received a notification from my security system the moment Marcus pulled into the driveway. It was past midnight. The house was dark, save for the single lamp I had left on in the foyer. I was sitting in the armchair by the window watching the feed from the front door camera on my tablet. I had already packed his bags. They were sitting neatly on the porch, 2 Louis Vuitton suitcases containing his designer suits and his ego, both of which were about to take a serious bruising. I watched as Marcus stormed up the walkway. He looked disheveled. His tie was undone, his hair was a mess, and his face was a portrait of pure, unadulterated rage. He reached for the door handle, expecting to storm in and scream at me to assert his dominance, to throw me out as he had planned. Instead, he walked face first into the solid oak door. He stumbled back, confused. He reached for the biometric scanner, pressing his thumb against the glass. Usually the lock would chirp a happy melody and the deadbolt would slide open. Tonight it emitted a low, harsh buzz. The small LED screen flashed red. Access denied. User unknown. I saw him try again and again. He wiped his thumb on his pants thinking it was sweat. He pressed harder, as if brute force could override the code I had rewritten 3 hours ago. When the red light flashed for the 5th time, something inside him snapped. "Sophia, open this door!" he screamed, pounding his fist against the wood. "Open this goddamn door right now or I will break it down." I took a sip of my tea. Earl Grey. I didn't move. He started kicking the door. The heavy thuds echoed through the empty house. I could hear him shouting obscenities, calling me names that would have made his mother faint if she weren't so busy judging everyone else. Lights in the neighboring houses flickered on. The Johnsons across the street stepped out onto their porch. Marcus didn't care. He was a man possessed. "I am calling the police," he shouted, pulling out his phone. "You cannot lock me out of my own house. You are insane. I am going to have you arrested for illegal eviction." I watched him dial 911. I waited. This was the part I had been looking forward to the most. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up the driveway, its blue lights washing over the front lawn. 2 officers stepped out. One was a young rookie. The other an older man I recognized from the neighborhood association meetings, Officer Miller. Marcus ran toward them like a drowning man spotting a life raft. "Officer, thank God!" Marcus panted, pointing a shaking finger at the house. "My wife has locked me out. She has changed the locks illegally. I own this house. I need you to force entry and arrest her." Officer Miller looked at Marcus, then at the house. "Sir, do you have identification?" "It is in the house," Marcus yelled. "Everything is in the house. She locked me out." "Look, I am Dr. Marcus Brooks. You know who I am. This is my property." I decided it was time to make my entrance. I opened the door calmly and stepped out onto the porch. I was still wearing my red dress, but I had thrown a silk shawl over my shoulders to ward off the night chill. I held a file folder in my hand. "Good evening, Officer Miller," I said, my voice smooth and controlled. "I apologize for the disturbance. I was hoping to handle this privately, but my tenant is becoming quite aggressive." Tenant. Marcus choked out the word. "Tenant, I am her husband. I bought this house." Officer Miller walked up the steps, his hand resting casually on his belt. "Mrs. Brooks, good to see you. We got a call about a domestic disturbance and an illegal lockout." "It is not a lockout, officer," I said, handing him the file. "And it is not a domestic dispute. It is a landlord-tenant issue. Mr. Brooks here is in violation of his lease agreement, specifically Clause 4B regarding noise ordinances and Clause 7A regarding criminal conduct on the premises." Marcus looked like he was going to have a stroke. "What lease? What are you talking about? There is no lease." Officer Miller opened the file. He shined his flashlight on the documents. The first page was a deed transfer dated 3 years ago, moving the property from Marcus and Sophia Brooks to Nemesis Holdings, LLC. The second page was a standard residential lease agreement signed by Marcus Brooks, listing him as the primary occupant. "I remember this," Marcus stammered, his eyes darting across the page. "This was the insurance paperwork. You told me it was for the umbrella policy to protect the practice." I smiled, a cold, sharp thing. "You should really read what you sign, Marcus. You are a doctor, aren't you?" "Details matter. You signed a quitclaim deed transferring your interest in the home to my company Nemesis Holdings, and you signed a lease to live here as a tenant who has just caused a public disturbance and threatened the property manager. That is grounds for immediate lease termination." Officer Miller looked up from the papers. "The paperwork looks in order, Dr. Brooks. It says here the property belongs to the LLC. "That is a shell company," Marcus screamed. "She is the LLC. It is a trick. That is a civil matter, sir." Officer Miller said, his tone hardening. "Right now, looking at this valid lease and the disturbance you are causing, you have no legal right to be on this property if the owner wants you gone." I stepped forward. "I have packed his personal effects. I said, gesturing to the 2 suitcases on the porch. I am happy to let him take those, but he needs to leave the premises immediately. If he returns without a court order, I will press charges for trespassing. Marcus looked at the officers, then at me. He looked at the house he thought was his trophy. The realization was slowly dawning on him. He hadn't just lost his wife, he had lost his castle. You cannot do this, he whispered, his voice cracking. Sophia, please. Where am I supposed to go? I checked my watch. I hear Ashley has a comfortable guest room. Or maybe Jessica has the pull-out couch. Either way, you are trespassing, Mr. Brooks. Officer Miller gestured toward the street. You heard the lady, sir. Grab your bags. We will wait until your ride gets here. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at me. He looked small. The arrogance that had filled the restaurant just hours ago was gone, replaced by the terrified look of a man realizing he was naked in a blizzard. He grabbed the handles of the suitcases, his knuckles turning white. As he dragged them down the driveway, the sound of the wheels on the pavement sounded like a funeral dirge. A pair of headlights cut through the darkness. It was Ashley's Range Rover. She screeched to a halt at the curb, nearly hitting the mailbox. She jumped out of the car, ignoring the police officers. Sophia, you witch! She shrieked, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass. You cannot do this! My father is a judge. We will sue you for everything you have. We will bury you. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. Tell your father I said hello, Ashley. And tell him to check the property records before he files anything. He will find that Nemesis Holdings has a very aggressive legal team. Oh, and Ashley? She stopped, her hand on the car door, her face twisted in hate. What? Make sure Marcus pays rent if he stays with you. He has a history of defaulting on his obligations. Ashley screamed something incoherent and shoved Marcus into the passenger seat. She slammed the door so hard the car shook. As she peeled away, leaving tire marks on the asphalt, I felt a deep, resonating sense of peace. Officer Miller tipped his hat to me. Sorry for the trouble, Mrs. Brooks. You have a good night. You too, officer. I stepped back inside and closed the heavy oak door. The lock beeped and clicked, securing my fortress. I was alone in a 5-bedroom mansion, but for the first time in 5 years, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like oxygen. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I needed to stay hydrated. Tomorrow was Monday and I had a clinic to repossess. The following morning, I sat in my temporary office, a sleek glass-walled space overlooking Piedmont Park, sipping a matcha latte. On my tablet screen was a live feed from the security cameras at Brooks Aesthetic Medicine. Marcus had named the clinic after himself, of course, because in his mind, the sun rose and set on his surgical skills. He arrived at 9 sharp, wearing yesterday's wrinkled suit, looking like a man who had slept on a friend's couch, which he had. He marched past the reception desk, ignoring the confused look of the receptionist, who had probably heard the rumors by now. I knew exactly what he was doing. He needed cash. Lawyers like the one he wanted to hire, the shark who promised to rip prenups apart, cost $500 an hour, with a $50,000 retainer up front. Marcus did not have $50,000. He had $12 and a bruised ego. But he thought he had the clinic's operating account. He thought he could dip into the business funds, treat it like his personal piggy bank, as he always tried to do before I stopped him. I watched him log into the main terminal in his office. I could almost hear his aggressive typing. He was trying to wire money to the law firm. I took another sip of my latte and waited for the inevitable explosion. It happened in seconds. On the screen, Marcus slammed his fist onto the mahogany desk. He picked up the phone and dialed the bank, his face turning a shade of purple that would usually worry a cardiologist. I didn't need audio to know the conversation. He was screaming that there was a mistake. He was shouting that he was the owner. He was demanding to speak to a supervisor. But he wasn't the owner. That was the beauty of the corporate structure I had built for him 4 years ago. To protect him from malpractice lawsuits, I had separated the medical practice from the management company. Technically, Marcus was just the lead surgeon and employee of BAM Management Services. And BAM Management Services was a subsidiary of a holding company that listed my mother as the primary trustee. I had fired him as the administrator at 8 this morning. His access to the funds was revoked. He could perform surgery, but he couldn't touch a dime of the revenue. Marcus slammed the phone down. He looked frantic. He started pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. Then his eyes landed on the Cyton laser machine in the corner. It was a brand new skin resurfacing device worth $150,000. I saw the gears turning in his head. If he couldn't get cash, he would sell the assets. He walked over to the machine, unplugging it from the wall. He was going to try to liquidate his own practice piece by piece. That was my cue. I picked up my phone and sent a text message to the logistics team waiting around the corner. Proceed. On the security feed, I saw the front doors of the clinic swing open. 3 large men in blue coveralls walked in. They weren't police and they weren't patients. They were repossession agents from MedEquip Leasing. Marcus ran out to the lobby, his path blocked by the lead agent, a man named Big Tony, who I had hired specifically for his intimidating stature and unwavering professionalism. "Can I help you?" Marcus demanded, trying to summon some of his lost authority. "You cannot just walk in here. This is a sterile environment." Big Tony didn't blink. He held up a clipboard. "We are here for the equipment, Mr. Brooks. We have a repossession order for the lasers, the anesthesia machines, the patient monitors, and the surgical tables." "What are you talking about?" Marcus stammered, his voice rising an octave. "I own those machines. I paid for them." "Actually, sir, you lease them," Big Tony corrected him, tapping the paper. "The lease is held by MedEquip Leasing. The account is 90 days past due on paper due to a triggered acceleration clause. The owner of the leasing company has demanded immediate return of the collateral." Marcus looked confused. "MedEquip Leasing? I never signed a lease with them. You signed everything Sophia put in front of you, Marcus," I whispered to the screen. "You were too busy looking at yourself in the mirror to notice that the equipment wasn't purchased by the practice. It was purchased by my company and leased back to you. It was a tax strategy, I told you. And it was. But it was also insurance." "I am not letting you take anything," Marcus shouted, blocking the hallway. "Get out of my clinic. Jessica, call the police." Jessica, the nurse he was leaving me for, was standing behind the reception desk. She looked from Marcus to the repo men, then back to Marcus. She saw the wrinkled suit, she saw the desperation, she saw the power shift. She didn't pick up the phone, she just stood there hugging her clipboard to her chest, realizing that her golden ticket was turning into lead. "Sir, please move aside," Big Tony said calmly, signaling to his team. "We have a job to do." The next hour was a dismantling of Marcus's identity. The men moved efficiently. They wheeled out the halo laser, first the crown jewel of the clinic. Then they came for the cool sculpting machines. Marcus ran from room to room trying to unplug machines before they could get to them, trying to barricade doors with rolling stools. It was pathetic. It was tragic. And it was entirely self-inflicted. The waiting room was full of patients, rich women from Buckhead with appointments for Botox and fillers. They watched in horror as their sanctuary of beauty was stripped bare. I saw Mrs. Sterling, the wife of a senator, standing up and demanding to know why furniture was being moved. Marcus tried to calm them down. "Ladies, please. It is just a misunderstanding, a vendor dispute." He lied, sweat dripping down his forehead. "We will be with you shortly." "But you can't perform surgery without a table, Marcus. You can't do laser treatments without a laser." Big Tony rolled the main surgical table right past Mrs. Sterling. That was the final straw. She picked up her Hermes bag and walked out, followed by every other patient in the room. The receptionist, seeing the writing on the wall, grabbed her purse and followed them out, muttering something about her paycheck. Within 45 minutes, the clinic was a shell. The exam rooms were empty, echoing boxes. The operating theater was stripped down to the bare walls. All that was left were a few chairs in the lobby and the diploma hanging on the wall behind Marcus's desk. Marcus stood in the middle of the empty lobby. He looked around, his eyes wide and hollow. The silence was deafening. The hum of the expensive machinery was gone. The chatter of patients was gone. The ring of the telephone was gone. Jessica walked out of the back room. She was holding her personal belongings in a plastic bag. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "We can fix this. It is just a mix-up. Sophia is doing this, but I will sue her." Jessica looked at the empty room, then at Marcus. "With what money, Marcus? You don't have a lawyer, you don't have a clinic, you don't even have a car." She walked past him, the click of her heels sounding like gunshots in the empty space. She didn't look back. Marcus was alone. He slumped down onto the floor, sitting cross-legged in the middle of the empty lobby where he used to hold court like a king. He pulled out his phone, probably to call his mother, but then he stopped. He realized there was nothing she could do. He looked up at the security camera in the corner. He knew I was watching. He stared right into the lens, his face a mask of defeat and pure hatred. "You win," he mouthed. I tapped the screen and zoomed in. "Oh, Marcus," I said to the empty room, sipping the last of my latte. "I haven't even started winning yet. This was just the warm-up." I closed the app and picked up my phone. It was time to call Lucas. If Marcus thought losing his business was bad, wait until he found out his brother had gambled away the safety net he thought he had. I dialed the number. "Hello, Lucas," I said, my voice cheerful. "We need to talk about that $40,000 you borrowed from the wrong people. I think I have a solution that works for both of us, but it is going to cost you." The dismantling of Marcus Brooks was complete. Now it was time to pull the thread that would unravel the rest of the family. Ashley decided to fight a financial nuclear war with a gossip column campaign. It was a predictable move for a woman whose entire existence revolved around the approval of the Junior League and the unspoken hierarchy of the Buckhead Country Club scene. While I was busy liquidating assets and securing legal fortresses, Ashley was busy making phone calls. My phone started buzzing with notifications from mutual acquaintances, people who usually only texted me when they needed a donation for a silent auction. They were sending me screenshots of Ashley's private Facebook posts and whispering about what she was saying over mimosas at the club. According to Ashley, I was a master manipulator who had embezzled funds from Marcus's practice. She told anyone who would listen that I had tricked him into signing documents while he was medicated or under duress. She painted a picture of Marcus as the innocent, trusting victim, and me as the predatory outsider who had infiltrated their prestigious family to steal their generational wealth. It was a compelling story if you ignored facts, logic, and forensic accounting. She was trying to ruin my reputation to make me toxic to my business partners, hoping that if she cut off my income, I would be forced to settle. She did not understand that in my world, reputation is not built on gossip, it is built on leverage. And while Ashley was loud, her husband Lucas was very quiet. Lucas was Marcus's older brother, a man who lived in the shadow of his wife's loud personality and his brother's flashy career. He worked a vague job in insurance that his father-in-law had secured for him, but everyone knew he spent more time on the golf course than in the office. I had been watching Lucas for a long time. I knew something the rest of the family ignored. Lucas had a twitch. Whenever the topic of money came up at family dinners, his left eye would spasm slightly. He checked his phone constantly under the table, not for texts, but for scores. Football, basketball, horse racing, it didn't matter. If there were odds, Lucas had a stake in it. I sat in my car outside the Vault, an upscale cigar lounge where Lucas liked to hide from Ashley on Tuesday afternoons. I checked the file on the passenger seat one last time. It was a portfolio of bad debt I had purchased 3 days ago from a third-party collection agency that specialized in high-risk off-book loans. It had cost me 40 cents on the dollar, a steep price, but for the leverage it provided, it was a bargain. I signaled the valet and walked into the lounge. The air was thick with the smell of expensive tobacco and old leather. It was a boys' club, a place where deals were made and secrets were kept. I saw Lucas sitting in a high-backed armchair in the corner, nursing a bourbon that was far too large for 2 in the afternoon. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his collar was unbuttoned, and he was staring at his phone with the desperation of a man watching a bomb timer count down. "Hello, Lucas," He jumped, spilling a splash of amber liquid onto his khakis. He looked up at me, his eyes widening in panic. Sophia, what are you doing here? You cannot be here. If Ashley finds out I am talking to you, she will kill me. I pulled up a chair and sat down opposite him, crossing my legs. Ashley is currently busy telling the entire PTA that I am a thief, so I doubt she is concerned with your whereabouts right now. We need to talk, Lucas. He wiped the bourbon off his pants with a cocktail napkin, his hands shaking. I have nothing to say to you. You ruined my brother. You kicked him out of his own house. You are vicious, Sophia. I am efficient, Lucas. There is a difference. Marcus tried to cheat me, and he lost. That is just business. But I am not here to talk about Marcus. I am here to talk about you and your friend Vinny. The color drained from Lucas's face so fast I thought he might faint. Vinny was a bookmaker operating out of a back room in Midtown. He wasn't the kind of person you wanted to owe money to, and Lucas owed him a lot. I don't know what you are talking about, Lucas stammered, trying to look indignant but failing miserably. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I placed them gently on the table between his bourbon and his trembling hands. This is a promissory note for $50,000 signed by you 6 months ago. Here is another one for $30,000 from the Super Bowl. And here is the big one, a line of credit for $120,000 that you defaulted on last week. Lucas stared at the papers. He couldn't breathe. How did you get these? I bought them, Lucas. I am an investor. Remember, I buy distressed assets, and right now, you are the most distressed asset I own. Vinny was very happy to cash out. He prefers liquid capital over chasing bad debtors who hide in cigar bars. So now you don't owe Vinny. You owe me. Lucas looked at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. $200,000. He whispered the number like a curse. I don't have it, Sophia. You know I don't have it. Ashley handles the finances. If you tell her, she will realize that you have gambled away your children's college funds and equity in your home. She will divorce you, Lucas. And unlike Marcus, she has a father who is a judge. She will strip you of everything. You will be living in a studio apartment eating ramen noodles for the rest of your life. Lucas put his head in his hands. What do you want? Why are you doing this? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a steel whisper. I don't want your money, Lucas. I know you can't pay. What I want is your wife. He looked up confused. Ashley, I want you to leash her. She is running around town slandering my name and threatening legal action she cannot afford. I want it to stop. Today. You want me to tell Ashley to shut up. Lucas laughed a dry, hysterical sound. You have met her, Sophia. Nobody tells Ashley to shut up. Then you better find a way, because this debt is secured against your assets. I did a title search on your house in the suburbs. It is in both of your names. If you don't pay me, I will file a lien against the property. I will force a foreclosure sale. I will take the house, Lucas, just like I took Marcus's clinic. Imagine Ashley's face when the sheriff arrives to evict her because her husband has a gambling addiction. Lucas turned pale. You wouldn't. That is our home. The kids live there. I didn't blink. I did not start this war, Lucas. Your family did. Marcus fired the first shot, and Ashley is pouring gasoline on the fire. I am just finishing it. You have two choices. Choice A is you go home and you explain the reality of the situation to your wife. You tell her that if she posts one more lie about me, or if she files one frivolous lawsuit, I will call in this debt immediately. Choice B is, I foreclose on your house next week and I make sure every person in that country club knows exactly why. I tapped the stack of papers with my manicured fingernail. The sound was quiet, but to Lucas it must have sounded like a gavel coming down. Lucas stared at the papers, then at me. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He realized that the quiet woman who used to bring potato salad to the family picnics was actually a shark who had been swimming in their pool all along. I will handle it, he whispered, his voice defeated. I will make her stop. Just please don't take the house. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. You have 24 hours, Lucas. If I see one more post or hear one more rumor, I am filing the paperwork. Enjoy your bourbon. I turned and walked out of the cigar lounge, leaving Lucas staring at the stack of evidence that proved his life was a lie. I checked my phone. Another nasty comment from Ashley on my Instagram. I smiled. It would be the last one. I had neutralized the loud sister-in-law by weaponizing her weak husband. The pawns were falling off the board one by one. But I wasn't done yet. There was still the matter of the mistress and the tax evasion. It was time to pay a visit to the woman who thought she had stolen my life. I always knew that Jessica's affection for my husband was directly proportional to the limit on his American Express card. She was not a woman built for struggle, love, or building a life from the ground up. She was a woman who attached herself to established success like a barnacle on a yacht hull. So when that yacht began to sink, I knew it was only a matter of time before she started looking for a life raft. I did not have to wait long. 3 days after the repossession of the clinic equipment, I received a text message from a number I did not recognize. It was short and desperate. "We need to talk. I have something you want." I knew immediately who it was. Marcus was currently living in a cheap motel off the interstate because Ashley had kicked him out after realizing he could not pay rent and was damaging her reputation. Jessica had likely visited him there, seen the stained carpet and the vending machine dinner, and realized her future as a doctor's wife had evaporated. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop on the other side of town, away from the prying eyes of our social circle. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The Jessica I knew was always perfectly put together with professional blowouts and designer scrubs that were 2 sizes too tight. The woman sitting in the back booth looked frayed. Her roots were showing she was wearing sweatpants, and her eyes were darting around the room as if she expected the police to burst in at any moment. I bought myself a black coffee and sat down across from her. I didn't say hello, I just waited. Silence is a powerful negotiator. Jessica wrapped her hands around her paper cup, her knuckles white. "He is broke, Sophia. He has nothing. He asked me to pay for his motel room last night. He asked me to borrow money from my parents to hire a lawyer. He promised me he would pay it back once he got his share of the house." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "There is no share of the house, Jessica. And there is no money. I assume you didn't bring me here just to complain about your boyfriend's financial ruin." She flinched at the word boyfriend. It sounded dirty now that he was destitute. "I am not with him anymore. I broke up with him this morning. I told him I couldn't be with a liar." I almost laughed. She could be with a liar, she just couldn't be with a poor one. But I kept my face impassive. "Good for you. Now why are we here?" Jessica reached into her oversized tote bag. She pulled out a thick leather-bound notebook and a USB drive. She placed them on the table, covering them with her hand. "I know you are going to destroy him," she whispered. "I saw what you did to the clinic. I saw what you did to Lucas. You take no prisoners." I simply raised an eyebrow. "I am just balancing the books, Jessica. I want immunity," she said, her voice shaking. "I know you are building a case. I know you are going to sue everyone involved in the conspiracy to defraud you. I want out. If I give you this, you have to promise not to name me in the lawsuit. You have to promise not to come after my nursing license." I looked at the notebook under her hand. I had a suspicion about what was in there, but I needed confirmation. "That depends on what is on the drive, Jessica. I don't make blind deals." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial hiss. "It is the second set of books, the real ones." My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't show it. For years I had suspected that Marcus was skimming cash from the practice. He did a lot of Botox and filler injections for cash, offering a slight discount if patients didn't ask for a receipt. I monitored the official accounts, but I knew the numbers didn't quite add up to the volume of patients I saw coming and going. Jessica tapped the notebook. "Marcus has been funneling cash out of the practice for 5 years. He calls it his freedom fund. He didn't want you to know how much he was really making because he didn't want to put it in the joint account. He has been taking cash payments for injectables and reconstructive surgeries and depositing them into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. He thought he was being smart. And you helped him, I stated flatly. You were the office manager, Jessica. You managed the schedule. You took the cash. She looked down at the table, shame flushing her cheeks. He told me it was temporary. He told me he was saving up so we could run away together. He gave me 5% of the take. So you are admitting to being an accomplice to tax evasion and embezzlement, I said, letting the legal weight of those words hang in the air. That is why I am giving this to you, she pleaded, pushing the notebook toward me. I kept detailed records, dates, patient names, amounts, and the account numbers for the wire transfers. It is all here. Over $200,000 in unreported income. If the IRS sees this, he is done. He is not just broke, Sophia. He is a felon. I looked at the black notebook. It was not just a weapon, it was a nuclear bomb. Tax fraud was not a civil matter, it was a federal crime. If I turned this over to the authorities, Marcus wouldn't just lose his license, he would go to prison for years. And since the money was never reported, it was never marital property, which meant I didn't have to fight for half of it, I just had to make sure he went to jail for hiding it. I picked up the USB drive. It felt heavy in my hand. I will make you a deal, I said, slipping the drive into my purse. If this data is accurate, and if it leads to a conviction, I will leave your name out of my civil filings. I won't sue you for alienation of affection or conspiracy to defraud. But I cannot control the IRS, Jessica. If they come for you, that is your problem. But I imagine they will be much more interested in the doctor who orchestrated the scheme than the nurse who turned state's evidence. Jessica let out a breath she had been holding for days. She nodded rapidly. Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. I want to move back to Ohio. I want to forget I ever met him. I stood up, taking the notebook. One more thing, Jessica. Where is he now? He is at the Red Roof Inn on the highway. Room 204. He is waiting for a wire transfer from his mother that is never coming. I looked at her, this young woman who had thought she could steal my life simply because she was younger and prettier. She didn't understand that beauty fades, but a criminal record lasts forever. Goodbye, Jessica. I suggest you start driving to Ohio today. I walked out of the coffee shop into the bright sunlight. I felt the weight of the notebook in my bag. This was it. I had taken his house. I had taken his clinic. I had neutralized his family, and now I held his freedom in my hands. Marcus wanted a divorce because he thought I was boring. He thought I was just a barrier to his fun. He was about to learn that I was actually the only thing standing between him and the federal government. I got into my car and placed the notebook on the passenger seat. I didn't drive home. Instead, I drove toward the office of my forensic accountant. We had some numbers to crunch before I made the phone call that would turn my husband's life from a tragedy into a cautionary tale. As I merged onto the highway, I allowed myself a small, cold smile. The asset freeze was over. Now the liquidation began. The summons to the Brooks family estate was framed as a peace offering, a final attempt at mediation before things got ugly in court, but I knew better. It was an ambush. As I pulled my car up the winding driveway lined with century-old oaks, I could feel the weight of their collective entitlement waiting for me behind the massive double doors. They didn't want peace. They wanted submission. They wanted the quiet, grateful Sophia back, the one who nodded politely while they made subtle jabs about my background and my hair. They were in for a rude awakening because that Sophia had died the moment I heard Marcus plotting to destroy me. I walked into the formal living room, and the air was so thick with tension it felt like walking into a pressurized cabin. The entire clan was assembled. Eleanor and Arthur sat on the velvet sofa, looking like monarchs whose kingdom had been invaded. Ashley was pacing by the fireplace holding a glass of white wine, her eyes swollen from crying, or perhaps from rage. Lucas sat in the corner staring at his shoes, terrified to make eye contact with me because he knew I held the deed to his life in my purse. And there was Marcus standing behind his mother's chair looking smug. He clearly thought that bringing me here to the seat of his family's power would intimidate me into surrendering. Sit down, Sophia, Eleanor commanded, pointing to a stiff, high-backed chair in the center of the room. It was positioned like a witness stand. I remained standing. I prefer to stand, Eleanor. This won't take long. Eleanor scoffed, adjusting the silk scarf around her neck. You have caused enough damage, Sophia. You have embarrassed this family. You have stolen my son's home. You have ruined his practice. And for what greed spite we took you in. We welcomed you into this family when you were nobody. We overlooked your background. We overlooked your lack of pedigree. And this is how you repay us, by acting like a common criminal. Arthur chimed in, his voice booming. He was a retired banker, a man used to getting his way. Listen to me, young lady. You are going to sign the house back over to Marcus today. You are going to return the equipment to his clinic. And you are going to issue a public apology for this slander campaign. If you do not, I will use every connection I have in this city to make sure you never do business in Atlanta again. I play golf with the district attorney, Sophia. Do not test me. I looked at them. They were so confident, so assured of their superiority. They truly believed that their last name was a shield that could protect them from consequences. Are you finished? I asked, my voice calm and even. Marcus stepped forward, his chest puffed out. Just do what they say, Sophia. You can't win against us. Dad has the best lawyers on retainer. Just give me my life back and maybe we will let you walk away with your car. I smiled. It was a genuine smile because I knew what was about to happen. I walked over to the large flat-screen television mounted above the fireplace. Actually, I prepared a little presentation for this meeting, I said, pulling the remote out of my bag. Since we are discussing truth and family values, I thought we should look at some evidence. What is she doing? Ashley snapped. Mom, make her stop. I connected my phone to the screen via AirPlay. The room went silent as the screen flickered to life. Video number 1, I announced. The screen showed the interior of Marcus's private office at the clinic. The timestamp was from 3 months ago. It showed Marcus and Jessica, the nurse, engaging in acts that made Eleanor gasp and cover her mouth. But it wasn't just the affair that was damning. It was the conversation. In the video, Jessica was buttoning her blouse and laughing. Your mother is going to be so mad if you divorce Sophia before the holidays. Marcus laughed, pouring a drink. My mother. Please. She hates Sophia. She just tolerates her because she thinks Sophia is a good little helper. Once I get the money from the house, Mom will be thrilled. She has always wanted me to marry someone classier, like you, babe. The video ended. The room was deadly silent. Eleanor turned to look at Marcus, her face pale. He called me classy, Mom, Marcus stammered. He was complimenting you. I didn't give them time to process. Video number 2, I said, swiping the screen. This video was recorded in this very living room during last Thanksgiving. The camera angle was from the security system in the hallway. It showed Ashley and Marcus standing by the buffet table while Eleanor was in the kitchen. Ashley was holding a glass of wine, looking drunk. God, I cannot stand this house, she slurred. It smells like mothballs and gin. Marcus chuckled. Just endure it, Ash. One day, it will be ours. Ashley rolled her eyes. Not soon enough. Ideally, Mom kicks the bucket before she spends all the inheritance on her stupid charity galas. She is such a senile old bat. Did you hear her telling that story about the debutante ball again? I swear I wanted to smother her with a pillow. The video cut to black. Ashley dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the hearth, the sound exploding in the silence. Eleanor slowly turned her head toward her daughter. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of heartbreak and fury I had never seen before. You said that, Eleanor whispered, her hand clutching her chest. You want me to die? Mom, no, it was a joke, Ashley cried, rushing forward. Sophia edited that. It is a deep fake. You know technology these days. I tapped the screen again. I am afraid the technology I am about to show you is very real, Arthur. This is a PDF. It is a little dry compared to the videos, but I think you will find the numbers fascinating. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. It was a forensic audit of the family trust fund, the one Arthur managed and Marcus had access to for medical emergencies. As you can see, I explained, pointing to the highlighted columns. Over the last 5 years, Marcus has made 27 withdrawals from the family retirement trust. He labeled them as business loans and medical equipment purchases. However, if you cross-reference these dates with the trading logs in the next column, you will see that the money went directly into a high-risk day trading account. Arthur stood up, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. "What is this, Marcus? What is she showing me?" I continued narrating the disaster. "Marcus lost $2.4 million of your retirement savings, Arthur. He was gambling on crypto and meme stocks. He lost it all. That is why he wanted to divorce me. He needed to sell my house to pay back the trust before you noticed the money was gone. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was stealing from you." Arthur looked at the screen, then at his son. $2 million. Marcus backed away, holding his hands up. "Dad, let me explain. I was going to make it back. The market just took a bad turn. I was trying to double the trust for you. I was doing it for the family." "You stole my retirement," Arthur roared. His voice shook the walls. "I worked 40 years for that money." "Dad, please," Marcus begged, backing into a side table and knocking over a vase. Arthur didn't listen. He lunged at his son. For the first time in his life, the golden boy was not being protected. Arthur grabbed Marcus by the lapels of his suit and shoved him against the wall. "You are a thief!" Arthur screamed, spitting in Marcus's face. "You are a liar and a thief. Get out of my house." Eleanor was slumped on the sofa, gasping for air. "My chest," she wheezed. "My pills!" Ashley was sobbing on the floor, not for her mother, but for her own exposure. Lucas sat in the corner, perfectly still, watching the empire crumble, just as I had predicted. I disconnected my phone and put it back in my bag. The chaos around me was absolute. A father beating his son, a mother possibly having a heart attack, a daughter exposed as a viper. "I think my work here is done," I said to no one in particular. I walked toward the door, stepping over the shattered glass of Ashley's wine. "Sophia, wait!" Marcus screamed, struggling against his father's grip. "You can't leave me like this. Help me." I stopped and looked back. The scene was almost biblical in its destruction. "I am not family, remember," I said coldly. "I am just the help. And I am officially off the clock." I walked out into the fresh air, leaving the screams and the accusations behind me. As I got into my car, I saw an ambulance turning into the driveway, lights flashing. I hoped Eleanor would be okay, physically at least. Mentally, she would never recover from knowing her children despised her. I started the engine. The family was destroyed. The money was gone. The reputation was in tatters. But I still had one loose end to tie up. The legal battle was just beginning, and I needed to make sure that when the dust settled, I was the only one standing. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old wood, a scent that usually commanded respect, but today, it just smelled like desperation. I sat at the defense table next to my lawyer Vance, keeping my posture rigid and my face blank. Across the aisle, Marcus was whispering frantically to his new attorney, a man named Richard Sterling. Sterling was known in Atlanta legal circles as a shark, a man who wore Italian suits that cost more than most people's cars, and who had a reputation for shredding prenuptial agreements like confetti. I knew exactly how Marcus had afforded him. He had taken a high-interest loan from a predatory lender, using his potential settlement from me as collateral. He was betting money he did not have on a fight he could not win. When the bailiff announced the arrival of Judge Patterson, everyone stood. Patterson was a no-nonsense woman who had spent 20 years in family court. She had seen every trick in the book, and she had zero patience for theatrics. Sterling wasted no time in launching his attack. He stood up, buttoning his jacket with a flourish, and walked toward the bench. "Your Honor, my client, Dr. Brooks, has been the victim of a calculated and malicious campaign of financial abuse. His wife, the defendant, has illegally locked him out of his marital home, seized his business assets, and left a respected surgeon with absolutely no means of support. We are asking for an emergency order granting Dr. Brooks immediate access to the residence in Buckhead and spousal support in the amount of $20,000 a month to maintain the lifestyle to which he is accustomed. Marcus nodded along, looking the picture of the aggrieved victim. He even managed to squeeze out a few unshed tears, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Sterling continued, his voice rising with righteous indignation. Mrs. Brooks claims the house belongs to a limited liability company. We argue that this is a fraudulent conveyance designed to hide marital assets. Dr. Brooks contributed to that household for 5 years. He paid bills. He bought groceries. He invested his soul into that marriage only to be discarded like trash the moment he became inconvenient. Judge Patterson looked over her glasses at me. Mrs. Brooks, those are serious accusations. Locking a spouse out of the marital home is generally looked down upon in this court. I felt a moment of panic. Sterling was good. He was painting a picture where the technicalities of the law didn't matter as much as the emotional narrative. He was making me look like a monster. Vance placed a hand on my arm, signaling me to stay calm. He stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. He didn't stride. He didn't flourish. He simply walked to the podium and placed a single thin document on the stand. Your Honor. The plaintiff's counsel tells a compelling story, Vance said, his voice low and bored. But it is a story that contradicts the sworn written agreement Dr. Brooks signed 5 years ago. I present to the court Exhibit A, the prenuptial agreement dated June 12, 2019. Sterling jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. That document was signed under duress. My client was not given adequate time to review it. Vance ignored him. Clause 14, Section B specifically states that any real estate acquired during the marriage by either party through the use of separate corporate entities and funded by premarital separate property shall remain the sole property of that entity. The house in question was purchased by Nemesis Holdings, LLC. The funds for that purchase came from a trust fund established by Mrs. Brooks's grandfather 10 years before she even met the plaintiff. We have the forensic accounting trail to prove it. Not 1 cent of Dr. Brooks's income went into the purchase or maintenance of that property. Judge Patterson picked up the document, flipping to page 14. She adjusted her glasses. It appears your client initialed this clause Mr. Sterling. Right here next to the paragraph about separate property. Marcus shifted in his seat, his face losing some of its color. He hadn't read it. I told him he hadn't read it. He had been too busy looking at the engagement ring he had bought with a credit card to read the fine print. But Vance wasn't done. He pulled out a second document, the black notebook Jessica had given me. Furthermore, Your Honor, regarding the request for spousal support, the plaintiff claims he needs $20,000 a month to maintain his lifestyle. He claims he has no income. However, we have evidence that suggests Dr. Brooks has been maintaining a very different kind of lifestyle, one funded by illegal means. Sterling slammed his hand on the table. This is irrelevant. We are here to discuss support, not character assassination. It is relevant to the doctrine of clean hands. Vance countered, his voice sharpening. You cannot ask a court of equity for relief when your own hands are dirty. Dr. Brooks claims he contributed to the household. But according to these ledgers provided by his former office manager, Dr. Brooks has been diverting over $40,000 a year into offshore accounts to avoid taxes. He didn't contribute to the household, Your Honor. He was hoarding money for himself while my client paid the mortgage, the utilities, and the insurance. The courtroom went silent. Judge Patterson's eyes narrowed. She looked at Marcus, who was now sweating profusely. Is this true, Mr. Sterling? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Is your client hiding assets while asking this court for money? Sterling looked at Marcus, waiting for a denial. But Marcus just stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The silence was his confession. Judge Patterson closed the file folder. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Mr. Sterling, I suggest you advise your client that perjury is a crime, as is tax evasion, but that is a matter for the federal courts. As for this court, I am denying the motion for emergency support. I am also denying the motion for access to the residence. Marcus stood up, knocking his chair over. But, Your Honor, I have nowhere to go. I have no money. She took everything. Judge Patterson looked down at him with zero sympathy. Then, I suggest you dip into those offshore accounts, Dr. Brooks. Or perhaps find a job that does not involve defrauding the government. If you come into my courtroom again with unclean hands, I will hold you in contempt. Dismissed. She banged her gavel and walked out. I sat there for a moment, letting the relief wash over me. It was done. The legal firewall held. I stood up and gathered my purse. Vance gave me a rare smile. Swift and brutal, he said. Just how we like it. We turned to leave. Marcus was standing alone at the plaintiff's table. Sterling was already packing his briefcase, looking annoyed. I need that retainer refilled by Monday, Marcus, I heard Sterling say, or I am off the case. Marcus looked at me. His eyes were red. His suit was rumpled, and he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Sophia, he whispered. I don't have anywhere to sleep tonight. Ashley won't answer my calls. I stopped. I looked at the man I had vowed to spend my life with. I remembered the day we got married. I remembered how he promised to protect me. And then I remembered the conversation I heard on the baby monitor. I remembered him laughing about kicking me out on our anniversary. I reached into my purse. For a second I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Maybe he thought I was going to give him cash. Maybe he thought I was going to give him a key. Instead, I pulled out a business card. It was for a men's shelter downtown. A place I donated to every Christmas. They have beds open until 8 p.m., I said, placing the card on the table. Tell them Sophia sent you. They might give you an extra blanket. I walked out of the courtroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I didn't look back. I had a dinner reservation at Le Monde, the same restaurant where he had tried to humiliate me. Only this time I would be paying with my own card and the wine would taste like victory. Marcus was officially homeless and I was officially free. But as I walked into the sunlight, I knew the war wasn't completely over. There was still one person who hadn't paid her dues yet. Ashley. She thought she could hide behind her husband's silence, but she was about to find out that silence is expensive and her bill was past due. For Ashley, the only thing worse than being poor was being irrelevant. Her entire identity was constructed around her position as the social gatekeeper of the Buckhead elite. She viewed the world from the pristine terrace of the Peachtree Golf and Country Club, where she served as the youngest member of the board of directors. It was her throne, and she ruled it with an iron fist wrapped in a cashmere cardigan. But news in Atlanta travels faster than a Porsche on the interstate, and the news of Marcus's humiliation in court had reached the clubhouse before breakfast. I was sitting in my office reviewing the acquisition papers for a distressed commercial plaza when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an old acquaintance named Caroline, who sat on the same board as Ashley. It was just a photo. The photo showed Ashley standing outside the clubhouse security escorting her to her car while she screamed at the club president. The caption read, "She has been voted off the island. You didn't hear it from me." I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The club had strict bylaws regarding the conduct of its members and their immediate families. Having a brother who was effectively homeless and under investigation for federal tax fraud was apparently a bridge too far for the old money crowd. They had asked Ashley to resign quietly to spare the club embarrassment. Knowing Ashley, she had refused to go quietly. She had likely insulted the president's wife and threatened to sue the grass off the golf course. I knew exactly where she would go next. She wouldn't go home to cry. She wouldn't go to Marcus to comfort him. She would come for the person she blamed for everything. Me. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the parking lot. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, Ashley's Range Rover screeched into a visitor spot, taking up 2 spaces. She stormed out of the car, slamming the door so hard I could hear it from the 4th floor. She was wearing a tennis outfit, white and pristine, but her face was a mask of twisted red fury. She marched past the security desk in the lobby, likely screaming that she was family and ignoring the poor guard who tried to stop her. I walked back to my desk. I didn't call the police. I didn't lock the door. Instead, I propped my phone up against a stack of books on my desk. I opened my social media app, the one where I had quietly built a following of over 50,000 people by sharing real estate advice and business tips. I titled the stream, "When the Mask Slips, Dealing with Harassment in the Workplace." I hit the red button that said, "Go live." The door to my office flew open with a bang that shook the framed diplomas on the wall. Ashley stood there, chest heaving, eyes wild. She didn't look like a socialite anymore. She looked like a cornered animal. "You ruined my life," she screamed, marching toward my desk. She grabbed a crystal vase from the side table and hurled it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet office. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded on the desk. "Hello, Ashley. I assume the board meeting didn't go well." "Don't you dare talk to me like that, you smug little witch," she shrieked. She pointed a finger in my face, her nails digging into the air. "You think you are so smart, don't you? You think because you stole Marcus's house, you are one of us. You will never be one of us, Sophia. You are nothing but a diversity hire who got lucky. You are trash wrapped in designer clothes." I glanced at my phone. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 200, 500, 1,000. The comments were flying by faster than I could read them. "Ashley, I think you should calm down," I said, keeping my voice level and reasonable. "You are damaging my property, and you are saying things you cannot take back." "I don't care," she yelled, slamming her hands on my desk. "I want you to fix this. Call the club president. Tell him it was all a misunderstanding. Tell him you lied about Marcus. If you don't, I will make sure every door in the city is slammed in your face. I will tell everyone where you really came from. I will tell them about your mother cleaning houses. I will tell them you are just a ghetto girl playing dress-up." There it was. The words she had been dying to say for 5 years. The racism she had masked with polite smiles and backhanded compliments was finally out in the open, breathing the same air as us. I leaned forward. "Excuse me, Ashley, what did you just call me?" "You heard me?" She spat, her face distorted with ugly, unrestrained hate. "You belong in the ghetto, Sophia. Not in this office, not in my family. You people are all the same. You take and you take and you destroy everything decent people build. You are a thief. You stole my brother's money. You stole my family's dignity." She grabbed a heavy bronze sculpture from my desk, a piece of abstract art I loved, and raised it over her head as if to throw it at me. "Go ahead, Ashley," I said, not flinching. "Throw it. But before you do, you might want to say hello to the audience." Ashley froze the sculpture, hovering in the air. What I pointed to the phone propped up against the books. The little red light was blinking steady and unblinking. "We are live, Ashley. Currently, there are 12,000 people watching this. They just heard you call me a ghetto girl. They heard you say you people. They watched you destroy my office. And judging by the comments, I think a few of them might be your neighbors. Oh, look, someone just tagged your husband's employer." Ashley lowered the sculpture, her hands trembling violently. She looked at the phone, then at me. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking gray and sick. You recorded that," she whispered. "I am live streaming it," I corrected. "Say hi to the internet, Ashley. You are finally famous, just like you always wanted." She lunged for the phone. I snatched it away before she could touch it. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice turning to ice. "If you touch me, I will have you arrested for assault on top of vandalism and trespassing. Get out of my office, now." Ashley backed away, her eyes wide with terror. She realized what she had done. In a matter of 3 minutes, she had torched her reputation, her social standing, and her future. "You can't post that," she stammered. "You have to delete it." "Please, Sophia, I didn't mean it. I was just angry." I looked at the camera. "I think you meant every word, Ashley. Goodbye." She turned and ran. She didn't walk. She ran out of the office, covering her face with her hands. as if that could hide her from the thousands of digital eyes that had just witnessed her soul. I ended the live stream. I saved the video. I posted it to my timeline. Then I called security to come clean up the glass. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Within an hour, the video had been shared 10,000 times. It was on Twitter. It was on TikTok. The hashtag Buckhead. Karen was trending locally. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It wasn't Ashley. It was Lucas. Sophia. He breathed into the phone, his voice sounding like a ghost. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Lucas. Your wife came to my office and gave a performance. I just provided the stage. I just got fired, he said. His voice broke. The partners at the firm saw the video. They said they have a zero-tolerance policy for hate speech and that having my wife attached to the firm is a liability they cannot afford. They fired me via email, Sophia. I was escorted out of the building by security. I felt a twinge of pity for Lucas, but it passed quickly when I remembered how he had stood by and watched Ashley torment me for years without saying a word. Silence is complicity. I told you to leash her, Lucas, I said. I warned you. I told you that if she didn't stop, I would take everything. You thought I was bluffing. But my job, the house. We have nothing left, he cried. You still have each other, I said. Maybe you can bond over your shared unemployment. Or maybe you can finally stand up to her now that she has cost you your livelihood. Either way, Lucas, the debt you owe me is still valid. I expect my first payment on the 1st of the month. Don't be late. I hung up the phone. I looked around my office. There was broken glass on the floor and a dent in the drywall where the vase had hit. But the air felt cleaner. The toxicity that had hovered over my life for 5 years. The constant judgment, the subtle racism, the gaslighting, it was all out in the open now, exposed to the sunlight where it could wither and die. Ashley had wanted to destroy me. Instead, she had handed me the final weapon I needed to dismantle her entire existence. The family was gone. Their money was gone. Their reputation was gone. But I wasn't done yet. Marcus was still out there, and I had a feeling desperation would make him do something dangerous. I needed to be ready for the final act. Desperate men are dangerous men. I learned that in business school during a seminar on hostile takeovers, but I never thought I would have to apply that theory to my own husband. After the courtroom humiliation and the viral video of his sister destroying her reputation, Marcus went dark. He stopped calling. He stopped texting. To an amateur, this silence might have felt like victory. To me, it felt like the calm before a very violent storm. I knew that a narcissist stripped of his supply does not just fade away. He explodes. I had anticipated this. That was why, on the very first day when I transferred the house to the LLC, I also hired a private security firm. They were not the mall cop variety. These were former military professionals, men who moved like shadows and spoke in codes. For the last 2 weeks, a black SUV had been trailing me everywhere I went, keeping a discreet 2-car lengths distance. Marcus didn't know they existed, because Marcus never paid attention to anyone who wasn't serving him or praising him. It happened on a Tuesday night. I was driving home from a late dinner with Vance, celebrating another successful motion to dismiss Marcus's financial claims. I was taking the winding back road that led to the estate, a stretch of asphalt surrounded by dense Georgia pines. It was dark, the kind of darkness that feels heavy and suffocating. I checked my rearview mirror. The security team was there, their headlights 2 reassuring orbs in the blackness. Then suddenly a pair of high beams flashed from a side road. A beat-up sedan, the kind you rent for $20 a day, swerved aggressively into my lane. I slammed on the brakes, my tires screeching against the pavement. The sedan fishtailed and skidded to a halt sideways, blocking the road completely. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my mind stayed cold. This was it. The escalation. The driver door of the sedan flew open. Marcus stumbled out. He looked like a ghost of the man I married. His designer suit was gone, replaced by a stained t-shirt and jeans that hung loosely on his frame. He hadn't shaved in days. His eyes were wild, wide, and bloodshot, illuminated by the harsh glare of my headlights. He was holding something in his hand, a tire iron. He ran toward my car, screaming words I couldn't hear through the soundproof glass, but I could read his lips perfectly. Bitch, thief, mine. He reached my car and smashed the tire iron against the driver's side window. The reinforced glass spiderwebbed, but didn't shatter. He drew back to swing again, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He didn't want to talk. He wanted to hurt me. He wanted to punish me for being smarter than him. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I simply unlocked my phone and watched the monitor on my dashboard. Behind me, the doors of the black SUV opened. 2 men stepped out. They didn't run. They didn't shout. They moved with the terrifying efficiency of predators who knew exactly how this hunt would end. Marcus was raising the iron for a second blow when the lead agent, a man named Elijah, grabbed his wrist. It wasn't a struggle. It was physics. Elijah twisted Marcus's arm behind his back and kicked his legs out from under him. Marcus hit the asphalt face first, the tire iron clattering uselessly across the road. I rolled down my window just an inch. The night air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and exhaust fumes. "Let me go!" Marcus screamed, struggling against Elijah's knee, which was pinned firmly between his shoulder blades. "That is my wife. She stole my money. She stole my life." Elijah didn't even look at him. He looked at me. "Mrs. Brooks, are you injured?" "I am fine, Elijah. Please hold him there. The police are already on their way." I had called 911 the moment the sedan appeared. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking softly on the road. I walked over to where my husband lay pinned to the ground like a common criminal. He looked up at me, gravel embedded in his cheek. "Sophia, please. I just wanted to talk. I just wanted you to listen. I am desperate. I have nothing. You have to help me." I looked down at the tire iron lying a few feet away. "Is that how you talk, Marcus? With a weapon you weren't here to negotiate. You were here to intimidate. You thought if you scared me enough I would open the checkbook." He started to sob, a deep guttural sound of broken pride. "I am a doctor. You can't leave me like this." "You were a doctor," I corrected him. "Now you are just a liability." Blue lights cut through the trees. The police arrived within minutes. Officer Miller wasn't on duty this time. These were county deputies, and they were not amused by a barricaded road and an assault with a deadly weapon. They hauled Marcus up. He went limp, all the fight draining out of him, as the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "Marcus Brooks, you are under arrest for aggravated assault, attempted kidnapping, and violation of a temporary restraining order," one of the deputies recited. Marcus looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Restraining order." "What?" "Restraining order. The one my lawyer filed this morning after Ashley threatened me," I said calmly. "The judge granted it immediately, given the volatility of your family. By approaching me tonight, you just turned a civil dispute into a felony charge." They shoved him into the back of the patrol car. He pressed his face against the glass, mouthing my name over and over again. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the bend. Elijah handed me a bottle of water. "We will follow you home, Mrs. Brooks. And we will station a guard at the gate tonight." "Thank you, Elijah. Send the bill to the firm." I drove the rest of the way home in silence. My hands were steady on the wheel. I didn't feel fear. I felt a profound sense of closure. Marcus had played his final card. He had tried to use brute force in a game of chess, and he had been checkmated. Later that night, I imagined Marcus in the county holding cell. It would be a stark contrast to the plush lifestyle he felt entitled to. The fluorescent lights would hum incessantly. The air would smell of bleach and sweat. He would be stripped of his suit, his watch, and his dignity. He would be allowed one phone call. I knew exactly who he would call. He wouldn't call his father. Arthur had already disowned him after the trust fund revelation. He wouldn't call his mother. Eleanor was likely sedated in her bedroom recovering from the shock. He would call Ashley, his partner in crime, his biggest cheerleader. I imagined the phone ringing in Ashley's house. She would be sitting in the dark, nursing a glass of wine, staring at the comments on the viral video that had ruined her life. She would see the number on the caller ID county jail. She knew it was him. She knew he was in trouble. But Ashley was a survivor. She was a rat who knew when the ship had fully sunk. She wouldn't answer. She wouldn't accept the charges. She would let it ring. In that cold, concrete cell, Marcus would listen to the ringing echo in his ear, ring after ring, until the line clicked dead. And in that silence, he would finally understand the true cost of his betrayal. He was alone, truly, completely alone. And I was sleeping soundly in the master bedroom of the house he tried to steal, protected by the fortune he tried to take. The physical threat was neutralized. But the financial dismantling was not quite finished. I still had one more person to visit. The man who started it all. The man who taught Marcus that women were disposable. It was time to have a conversation with Arthur. They say blood is thicker than water, but in my experience, fear is the strongest solvent known to man. When you apply enough pressure to a weak man, he will not only break, he will liquefy and spill into every crack of his family's foundation until the whole structure collapses. Lucas was a weak man. I had known this from the moment I met him at the rehearsal dinner 5 years ago, where he let Ashley dictate what he ate and how much he drank. But I had underestimated just how much resentment he had been storing up during a decade of marriage to a professional bully. 3 days after Marcus was arrested, and 2 days after Ashley went viral as the Buckhead Karen, my receptionist called me with a strange tone in her voice. She said Mr. Brooks was in the lobby, but it wasn't Marcus. It was Lucas. He wasn't demanding to see me, he was begging. I told her to let him in. Lucas walked into my office looking like a man who had not slept since the Obama administration. His eyes were sunken, his skin was pasty, and his hands were shaking so badly he had to clasp them together to keep them still. He didn't sit down. He stood in front of my desk, staring at the abstract painting behind me, unable to meet my eyes. "I know I owe you money, Sophia," he started, his voice cracking. "I know the deadline is coming. I don't have the $200,000. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my pen against the desk. "I know you don't, Lucas. That is why my lawyers are currently drafting the foreclosure notice for your house. It is a beautiful property. I think it will fetch a good price at auction." Lucas flinched. "Ashley will kill me. She doesn't know about the debt. If you take the house, she will destroy me." "She has already destroyed you, Lucas," I said coldly. "She got you fired. She humiliated your family. And now, because of her spending habits and your gambling addiction, you are about to be homeless. Why are you protecting her?" He looked up then, and for the first time I saw something other than fear in his eyes. I saw hate. Pure, unadulterated hatred. "I am not here to protect her," he whispered. "I am here to trade." I raised an eyebrow. "Trade? You have nothing I want, Lucas. I already own your debt. I am about to own your house. What could you possibly offer me?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. He placed it on my desk with a trembling hand. "You think Marcus stole the money from the trust fund all by himself?" Lucas said. "You think my brother is smart enough to bypass Dad's security protocols and forge the authorization documents? Marcus can barely operate a fax machine, Sophia. He didn't do it alone." I picked up the envelope. Inside were photocopies of bank transfer authorizations. They were signed by Arthur Brooks, authorizing the transfer of funds to Marcus's accounts. But as I looked closer, I noticed something. The dates. "These transfers happened when Arthur was in Europe," I said, looking up. "Exactly," Lucas nodded. "And Marcus was at a medical conference in Miami. But Ashley was in town. Ashley has Dad's power of attorney for medical emergencies. She used that access to get into the safe. She practiced Dad's signature for weeks. I saw the practice sheets in the trash. I kept one. He pulled a second piece of paper from his pocket. It was a sheet of notebook paper covered in Arthur's signature, repeated over and over again until it was perfect. And at the bottom, in Ashley's unmistakable jagged handwriting, was a list of numbers, amounts. She was the mastermind. Lucas said, his voice gaining strength. Marcus needed the money to pay off his bad trades, but Ashley demanded a cut. She took 40% of everything they stole. That is how she paid for the renovations. That is how she paid for the Range Rover. She forged the documents, Sophia. That is grand larceny and forgery. I stared at the papers. This changed everything. Marcus was a thief, yes, but Ashley was the architect. She had framed her own brother to take the fall if they got caught, letting everyone believe it was just Marcus's greed while she spent the proceeds on designer handbags. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked. "This sends your wife to prison, Lucas." Lucas laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "She isn't my wife anymore, Sophia. She is an anchor, and I am drowning. She has treated me like a servant for 10 years. She mocks me in front of our children. She got me fired. Oh. And yesterday, when I told her we might lose the house, she told me I should just go kill myself so she could collect the life insurance." The room went cold. Even I, who had witnessed the depths of that family's depravity, was shocked. "So I want a deal," Lucas said, leaning forward. "I will testify. I will give you the originals. I will help you bury her. But you have to let me walk away." I looked at this broken man. He was selling out the mother of his children to save his own skin. It was despicable. It was pathetic. And it was exactly what I needed. "I won't forgive the debt, Lucas," I said. $200,000 is business. I don't give away money." His face fell. "Then what is the point?" But I continued. "I will restructure it. You give me this evidence. I will use it to file a lawsuit against Ashley for fraud and credit theft. I will force the sale of the house, not as a foreclosure which ruins your credit, but as a settlement. You will use your share of the equity to pay me back. Ashley's share will go to paying back Arthur's trust fund. You will walk away with $0, but you will be debt-free. And you will be free of her." Lucas swallowed hard. He ran the numbers in his head. He would lose his home. He would lose his lifestyle. But he would escape the debt that was crushing him, and he would escape the woman who hated him. "Do it," he said. "Burn her down." I took the envelope. "Pleasure doing business with you, Lucas." The next morning, a process server knocked on the door of the Brooks suburban mansion. Ashley answered, wearing a silk robe, looking hungover and miserable. She probably thought it was a delivery, or maybe a neighbor complaining about the grass. When the server handed her the thick stack of documents, she didn't scream. She froze. It wasn't just a lawsuit for the debt. It was a criminal complaint. Included in the exhibit list was a copy of the practice sheet with her forgeries. I wasn't there to see it, but Lucas told me later. He was sitting on this couch packing a bag. He said she read the first page, then looked at him. She saw the bag. She saw the look on his face. "You gave this to her," she whispered. Lucas zipped up his duffel bag. "I just did what you always told me to do, Ashley. I took some initiative." He walked out the door, leaving her standing in the foyer of a house she no longer owned, holding the proof of crimes she could no longer hide. Her phone started ringing. It was her father, the judge. He had received a copy too, and unlike Marcus, Ashley didn't have a relentless loyalty to fall back on. Her father cared about his reputation more than his daughter. When he saw the forgery, he wouldn't defend her. He would protect his bench. Ashley fell to her knees. The walls were closing in. Her brother was in jail. Her husband was gone. Her money was frozen. And the sister-in-law she had called a ghetto girl was about to become the owner of her house. I sat in my office signing the final paperwork for the lawsuit, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The roaches were scattering, and I had the only can of spray. But there was still one more act to play. The auction. I wanted to look them in the eye one last time when the gavel came down. I wanted them to see exactly who was buying their legacy. There is a specific smell to a bankruptcy auction that no amount of industrial cleaner can mask. It is the scent of failure, mixed with the stale coffee of bargain hunters. The auction for the seized assets of Marcus and Ashley Brooks was held in a cold concrete warehouse on the outskirts of the city, far removed from the manicured lawns of Buckhead, where these items once resided. I stood at the back of the room, wearing oversized sunglasses and a simple trench coat, watching the dismantling of an empire built on arrogance and my money. The room was packed. There were used car dealers looking for inventory, vintage collectors looking for watches, and wealthy housewives looking for a steal. And then there were the ghosts. Marcus stood near the exit, leaning against the wall. He was wearing jeans and a hoodie, trying to look invisible but failing. He couldn't stay away. He had to watch. It was a form of self-flagellation, a need to witness the final death of the persona he had crafted so carefully. First up was Ashley's closet. The auctioneer, a man with a monotone voice that stripped all glamour from the proceedings, held up a handbag. Lot number 23. A Hermes Birkin, 35, in ostrich leather. Lightly used. Starting bid $5,000. I saw Marcus flinch. I knew that bag. Ashley had made him buy it for her birthday 3 years ago. It had cost $20,000. He had put it on a credit card that took him 2 years to pay off. Now it was being dangled in front of strangers like a piece of meat. 5,000. Do I hear 6? 6 from the lady in the red hat. 7. Sold for $7,500. It went for pennies on the dollar. Bag after bag. Designer shoes that had only walked on red carpets were tossed into boxes, like donation pile leftovers. The jewelry Ashley had flaunted at the country club was scrutinized under jewelers' loupes and sold for scrap value. I watched Marcus physically shrink with every bang of the gavel. He wasn't just watching objects being sold, he was watching his social standing evaporate. Every item represented a lie they had told themselves about who they were. Without the props, the play was over. Then came the main event. The room buzzed with a different energy. The heavy metal bay doors rolled up and a hush fell over the crowd. Lot number 42, a 2022 Porsche 911 GT 3RS. Custom lizard green paint, carbon fiber interior, 12,000 miles. One owner. It was the beast. That was what Marcus called it. It was his pride and joy, his alter ego. He washed it by hand every Sunday. He parked it diagonally across 2 spaces to prevent scratches. He loved that car more than he loved me, more than he loved his family, perhaps more than he loved himself. It was the physical manifestation of the man he wanted to be, fast, loud, and impossible to ignore. I looked at Marcus. He was shaking. He had stepped away from the wall, his eyes locked on the car. He looked like a father watching his child being taken away by social services. The bidding started low. Too low. The reputation of the car was tainted. It was a seized asset, part of a criminal investigation into tax fraud. Superstitious buyers stayed away. 50,000. Do I hear 60? 60? 70? I nudged the man standing next to me. He was not Vance, my lawyer. He was a professional proxy, a man I paid to be my hands when I didn't want to get dirty. He nodded and raised his paddle. 80,000. The auctioneer looked around. 80,000 going once, going twice. I saw Marcus close his eyes. He was praying for someone to outbid us. He wanted his car to go to a collector, someone who would appreciate it. He wanted it to retain its value because if the car was still valuable, then maybe he was still valuable. Sold for $80,000 to bidder number 104. The gavel banged. It was over. The beast belonged to me. Or rather, it belonged to the shell company I used for acquisitions. I didn't stay to watch the rest. I turned and walked out to the loading dock where the vehicle pickup was happening. I needed to be there for the handover. I needed Marcus to see who held the keys. 10 minutes later, the Porsche was rolled out into the sunlight. The green paint gleamed aggressively against the gray asphalt. Marcus followed it out like a mourner following a hearse. He stood about 20 feet away, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. My proxy handed me the keys. The weight of the fob felt heavy and cold. I thanked him, and he walked away, leaving me alone with the car and my ex-husband. Marcus saw me. He walked over slowly, his steps heavy. "You bought it," he said, his voice flat and dead. "Of course you bought it. What are you going to do, Sophia? Are you going to drive it to the club just to spite me? You don't even like sports cars. You hate how loud the engine is." I looked at the car, then at him. "You are right, Marcus. I hate this car. It is impractical, it is ostentatious, and it compensates for a lack of character. I didn't buy it for me." He frowned, confused. "Then why to burn it, to crush it?" "No. I bought it as a bonus." "A bonus?" I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text. A moment later, a Honda Civic pulled into the lot. A young man stepped out. It was Tyrell, my junior analyst. Tyrell was 22 years old, brilliant, hardworking, and supported his mother and two sisters on his salary. He drove a car that was held together by duct tape and prayers. He had been the one who stayed up for 3 nights straight analyzing the forensic data on the trust fund, helping me build the case against Ashley and Marcus. Tyrell walked over looking nervous. "Mrs. Brooks." "You asked me to come," I smiled at him. "Tyrell, you have done excellent work this quarter. The restructuring of the logistics firm was flawless, and your assistance with the Brooks litigation was invaluable." "Thank you, ma'am," Tyrell said, straightening his tie. "I was just doing my job." I tossed him the keys to the Porsche. They caught the light as they arched through the air. Tyrell caught them instinctively, looking down at the Porsche logo in his palm with wide disbelief. "The company had a surplus in the acquisition budget," I said. "And since you are going to be leading the new division, I think you need a car that reflects your new position. It is yours, Tyrell. Title is in the glove box." Tyrell looked from the keys to the car, then to me. His mouth hung open. "Mrs. Brooks, are you serious? This is a supercar." "It is just a car, Tyrell. But it has good engineering. Enjoy it, just don't get any speeding tickets." Tyrell let out a whoop of joy that echoed off the warehouse walls. He ran to the car, running his hand over the hood with reverence. He opened the door and slid into the carbon fiber bucket seat. The engine roared to life, a deep guttural growl that used to make Marcus smirk with entitlement. I looked at Marcus. He had stopped breathing. He was watching a 22-year-old kid sit in his throne. He was watching his symbol of power being handed over like a party favor to a junior employee. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the light go out in his eyes completely. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even hate. It was total devastation. He realized that to me his most precious possession was nothing more than a corporate perk. I had reduced his entire identity to a line item on a spreadsheet. Tyrell revved the engine. "Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. I won't let you down." He peeled out of the lot, the tires chirping as the green beast shot forward, leaving a cloud of exhaust in its wake. Marcus stood in the smoke. He swayed slightly. His knees buckled and he slumped against the chain-link fence, sliding down until he hit the pavement. He put his head in his hands and wept. Not the fake tears for the courtroom. These were the ugly, silent sobs of a man who had looked into the mirror and seen absolutely nothing staring back. I walked past him toward my own car. I didn't stop to offer comfort. I didn't stop to gloat. The transaction was complete. The asset had been reallocated to someone with a future. Marcus was just a bad investment I had finally written off. As I drove away, I checked my schedule. The auction was done. The lawsuits were filed. The family was broken. But there was one final meeting on my calendar. The settlement conference. The moment where they would have to sign their surrender in ink. And I had a special pen ready for the occasion. The meeting took place in the same conference room where Marcus and I had once signed the papers to buy our dream home. The irony was not lost on me, even if it was completely invisible to the two shattered people sitting across the mahogany table. It had been 10 days since the auction, and reality had not just set in, it had moved in, unpacked its bags, and started redecorating their lives with misery. Marcus looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. His clothes were clean, but they were old styles from the back of his closet that hadn't been sold, and they hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds. His eyes were constantly darting around the room, as if he expected a process server to jump out of the ficus plant. Ashley was worse. The buckhead Karen who had once terrorized waitstaff for bringing her sparkling water instead of still was now trembling in a rain-soaked cardigan. Her roots had grown out, leaving a stark line of dark brown against the brittle blonde dye job. She wouldn't look at me. She stared at her hands, which were clasped, white-knuckled in her lap. They had asked for this meeting. They had begged for it, actually. Marcus had called my assistant 14 times in 1 hour, sobbing that they were ready to surrender. They wanted a truce. They wanted the bleeding to stop. I sat at the head of the table, a single manila folder in front of me. I didn't offer them coffee. I didn't offer them water. I wanted them uncomfortable. So I said, breaking the silence that was thick enough to choke on, "You wanted to talk. Talk." Marcus cleared his throat. It sounded like grinding gears. "Sophia, we can't do this anymore. We have nothing left. You took the house. You took the cars. You took the practice. Lucas has left Ashley. Mom is in a care facility. We are living in a motel room that costs $40 a night, and we can barely afford that." He looked up at me, his eyes filling with tears. "We are family, Sophia. Doesn't that mean anything? I know we made mistakes. I know we hurt you. But this is annihilation. Please, we are begging you. Stop the lawsuits. Stop the debt collectors. Just let us live." I looked at Ashley. "And you, Ashley? Do you have anything to add?" She flinched. She took a shuddering breath and whispered, "I am sorry. I am sorry for what I said. I am sorry for the video. Just please make it stop." I leaned back in my chair, studying them. It was pathetic. They weren't sorry they had done it. They were sorry they had lost. If I had been weak, if I had been less prepared, they would be the ones sitting in this chair laughing while I lived in that motel. I opened the folder. Inside was a document drafted by Vance and reviewed by 3 other attorneys. It was a masterpiece of legal entrapment. "I am willing to offer you a settlement," I said, sliding the document across the table. They both leaned forward, hope flaring in their eyes like a match in a dark cave. "I will agree to drop the civil lawsuit regarding the $200,000 debt I purchased from Lucas," I continued. "I will also agree to forgive the outstanding judgment for the damage caused to the clinic equipment. I will stop the foreclosure proceedings on Ashley's house, allowing you to sell it and keep whatever small equity remains after the mortgage is paid." Marcus looked like he was about to faint from relief. "Thank you, Sophia. Oh my God, thank you." However, I interrupted, my voice sharp as a scalpel. "There are conditions." Ashley looked at the document suspiciously. "What conditions?" "You will sign this affidavit," I said, pointing to the paper. "It is a full and detailed confession. It admits to the embezzlement of funds from the medical practice. It admits to the forgery of your father's signature on the trust fund documents. It admits to the conspiracy to defraud me of my marital assets. And it admits to the slanderous statements made against me and my business." I paused, letting the weight of the crime settle in the room. "In addition to signing this, you will issue a public apology. We have drafted it for you. It will run as a full-page ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Sunday. You will also record a video apology to be posted on all your social media channels, where you will admit that you lied about everything." Ashley recoiled as if I had slapped her. "I can't do that. That is social suicide. If I admit to forgery, if I admit to lying, I will never be able to show my face in this town again." "You can't show your face now, Ashley," I reminded her. "But this is the only way you get to keep a roof over your head. This is the only way you don't end up on the street next week. Marcus grabbed the pen. He didn't hesitate. He was past the point of pride. He just wanted the pain to stop. I will sign, he said. I will do whatever you want. Just promise me this ends it. Promise me you won't come after us for any more money. I promise I won't sue you for another dime, I said carefully, choosing my words. Marcus signed. His hand shook, but he put his name on the line that admitted he was a thief and a fraud. He pushed the paper to Ashley. Sign it, Ash, he hissed. We have no choice. Ashley looked at me with pure venom, but she took the pen. She signed her name below his, sealing her fate in blue ink. She pushed the document back to me. There. Are you happy you won? We are ruined. We are publicly humiliated. But at least we aren't going to jail. I picked up the document and checked the signatures. They were valid, notarized by the paralegal who had been standing silently in the corner. I closed the folder and placed my hands on top of it. Actually, I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. That brings me to the second part of our conversation. Marcus froze. Second part, I stood up and walked over to the window looking down at the street below. You see, I promised I wouldn't sue you civilly. I promised I wouldn't use this confession to extract money from you in a lawsuit. And I am a woman of my word. I will not be filing any more civil complaints. I turned back to face them. However, I never promised that I wouldn't comply with a federal investigation. Ashley stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. What? What investigation? I tapped the folder. The IRS has been very interested in your offshore accounts, Marcus, ever since Jessica handed over those ledgers. And the district attorney was very intrigued by the evidence of forgery and elder abuse regarding your father's trust fund. The only thing they were missing was a signed confession to tie it all together. They needed proof of intent. I held up the document they had just signed. And you just gave it to them. Marcus turned white. A deadly corpse like white. You tricked us. You said this was a settlement. It is a settlement, I said. A settlement of the truth. You see, civil law is about money. I don't need your money. Criminal law, however, is about justice. And justice is about to be served. Ashley screamed. She lunged for the folder, trying to tear it up, trying to destroy the evidence she had just created. But I was faster. I slid it into my briefcase and locked it. You can't do this, she shrieked. I promised not to sue you. I repeated, my voice hard as iron. I did not promise to obstruct justice. I have a legal obligation to report crimes. And you just confessed to 5 felonies in writing. From the street below, the sound began. It started as a low wail and grew louder and louder until it filled the room. Sirens. Not one, not two, but a cavalcade of them. Marcus ran to the window. He looked down and saw the flashing lights. Red and blue reflecting off the wet pavement. Unmarked cars. Uniformed officers. Agents with windbreakers that said I, RSCID, and FBI. They are here for you, I said. They have been waiting in the lobby for 10 minutes. I told them to give us a moment to finalize the paperwork. Marcus turned to me. He fell to his knees. Sophia, please, prison. I can't go to prison. I am a doctor. I am soft. I won't survive. You should have thought about that before you stole $2 million from your parents, I said. You should have thought about that before you tried to frame me. The door to the conference room opened. Big Tony. My security guard stepped aside. 4 federal agents walked in, followed by 2 police officers. Marcus Brooks, Ashley Brooks, the lead agent asked. Marcus couldn't speak. He was sobbing into the carpet. Ashley was backed into the corner, shaking her head, muttering no over and over again. I am Special Agent Henderson with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, the man said. You are under arrest for tax evasion, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The officers moved in. They pulled Marcus up from the floor. He was limp dead weight. They handcuffed him, his hands behind his back, right where he had signed his life away moments ago. Ashley fought. She screamed and kicked as they cuffed her, dragging her out of the room, kicking her heels against the doorframe. I stood there and watched them go. I watched the agents collect the folder from my desk. Agent Henderson nodded to me. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Brooks. This makes our job much easier." I nodded back. "Just doing my civic duty, Agent." When the room was finally empty, I walked back to the window. I watched them being led out of the building. A crowd had gathered. Phones were out recording the downfall of the Brooks dynasty. Marcus looked up one last time, searching for me in the window. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just watched. It was done. The trap I had set from the moment I heard that conversation on the baby monitor had finally snapped shut. They wanted to leave me with nothing. Instead, they were leaving with nothing but a federal indictment and a long time to think about their choices. I turned away from the window and picked up my purse. It was time for lunch. I was starving. The day of the sentencing was crisp and bright, the kind of Georgia morning that usually signaled brunch on a patio or a round of golf. But for the Brooks family, it signaled the end of life as they knew it. I arrived at the federal courthouse 30 minutes early. I did not wear black. Black is for mourning, and I was not mourning anything. I was celebrating a rebirth. I wore a white tailored suit, sharp enough to cut glass and stilettos, that clicked against the marble floors, like the ticking of a clock that had finally run out of time. I took my seat in the second row of the gallery directly behind the defense table. I wanted them to feel my presence. I wanted the heat of my gaze to burn the backs of their necks. When the bailiff led them in the air, the room seemed to get thinner. Marcus was wearing a gray suit that looked 2 sizes too big for him, a stark reminder of how much weight he had lost in the holding cell. His signature arrogance was gone, replaced by a twitchy, nervous energy. Ashley walked in behind him. She wasn't the lioness of Buckhead anymore. She looked frail, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face devoid of makeup. She refused to look at the gallery. She stared straight ahead at the judge's empty chair, as if hoping it would swallow her whole. The courtroom was packed. The press was there, of course. The downfall of a prominent plastic surgeon and a socialite was headline news. But there were also former patients, former friends, and creditors. Everyone wanted to see the final act of the tragedy. "All rise." Judge Harrington swept into the room. He was an older man with a face carved from granite and eyes that had seen every variation of human greed. He sat down and opened the file in front of him. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the rapid, shallow breathing of the 2 defendants. The proceedings began with the reading of the charges. It was a long list: tax evasion, wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud, filing false tax returns, identity theft. As the prosecutor read each count, I saw Marcus flinch. Each charge was a brick in the wall that was being built around him. When it was time for sentencing, Marcus's lawyer stood up. He gave a passionate speech about Marcus's contributions to the medical field, his lack of prior criminal record, and his severe emotional distress. He painted Marcus as a man led astray, a victim of circumstances. It was a good speech, but it was fiction. Judge Harrington listened impassively. When the lawyer sat down, the judge leaned forward. "Dr. Brooks, please stand." Marcus stood up. His legs were shaking so badly he had to grip the table for support. "Dr. Brooks, you were given a position of immense privilege in this society. You were trusted with the health of your patients, and you were blessed with a family that supported you. Instead of honoring that trust, you chose greed. You chose to steal not just from the government, but from your own parents and your own wife. You built a life on a foundation of lies, and when that foundation cracked, you tried to destroy the people around you to save yourself." The judge paused, letting the words sink in. "This court finds your lack of remorse and your attempt to frame your wife particularly egregious. Therefore, on the counts of tax evasion and wire fraud, I sentence you to 60 months in a federal correctional institution followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $2.4 million. 5 years. I heard Marcus let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. 5 years of his life. He would be 41 when he got out. His medical license was gone. His reputation was incinerated. He slumped back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Then it was Ashley's turn. "Mrs. Brooks, please stand." Ashley stood. She was trembling violently. Her lawyer had already negotiated a plea deal, but sentencing was still up to the judge's discretion. "Ashley Brooks, you were the architect of the forgery that defrauded your father's trust. You used your access and your family status to commit a crime against an elderly man who trusted you. You then engaged in a public campaign of harassment against the victim of your conspiracy." Ashley began to cry soft, whimpering sounds that echoed in the quiet room. "However, the court takes into consideration your cooperation in the final stages of the investigation and your lack of prior convictions, I am sentencing you to 3 years of probation." Ashley let out a breath of relief. She thought she had survived. She thought she had won. But Judge Harrington wasn't finished. "However, Mrs. Brooks, due to the nature of your felony conviction, which involves crimes of dishonesty and fraud, and considering the evidence presented regarding your stability, I am forwarding a recommendation to the family court. As a convicted felon on probation for fraud, this court deems you unfit to serve as the custodial guardian of your 2 minor children. Immediate custody is awarded to their father, Lucas Brooks. You are granted supervised visitation only pending a review by Child Protective Services." The scream that tore out of Ashley's throat was primal. It wasn't the scream of a Karen complaining to a manager. It was the scream of a mother who had just been severed from her children. "No," she shrieked, grabbing the edge of the table. "You can't take them. They are my babies. Lucas can't take them. He is useless. Please, Your Honor. I will go to jail. Just don't take my kids." Judge Harrington banged his gavel. "Order, bailiff. Please restrain the defendant." 2 officers moved in and grabbed Ashley by the arms. She was thrashing wild with grief, looking around the room for someone, anyone to help her. Her eyes landed on me. "Sophia," she screamed, her voice raw. "Help me! You did this! Tell them I am a good mother. Please." I sat perfectly still. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just watched. This was the cost. This was the price of the war she had started. She had tried to take my home, my livelihood, and my dignity. Now she was losing the only thing that actually mattered. The bailiffs dragged her out of the courtroom, her screams fading down the hallway until the heavy doors slammed shut. The room was quiet again. Only Marcus remained. The officers moved to take him into custody. He stood up slowly. He looked broken, a hollow shell of a man. As they turned him around to cuff him, he looked out into the gallery. He scanned the faces of the strangers who had come to watch him fall. And then he found me. I was sitting there in my white suit, calm and composed. Our eyes locked. In that moment I saw it, the realization. He saw the woman he had married, the woman who had balanced his books, managed his life, and loved him despite his flaws. He saw the partner he had betrayed for a nurse and a few $1,000s in tax savings. He saw the life he could have had. We could have been a power couple. We could have built an empire together. I would have protected him from the world. Instead, I was the one who had dropped the guillotine. His eyes filled with tears. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked terrified and deeply, overwhelmingly sorry. He mouthed 2 words to me. "I'm sorry." I didn't mouth anything back. I didn't nod. I simply watched as the officer took his arm and led him toward the side door that led to the holding cells. He looked back over his shoulder one last time, desperate for a crumb of forgiveness, a sign that he still existed to me. But I gave him nothing. The door closed. Marcus was gone. I sat there for a moment longer, listening to the shuffling of papers and the murmurs of the crowd as they filed out. It was over. The asset freeze was lifted. The liabilities were liquidated. I stood up, smoothing the fabric of my white suit. I walked out of the courtroom, my head held high. The air outside was sweet and warm. I checked my phone. I had 3 missed calls from potential investors and a text from Vance inviting me to dinner to celebrate. I walked down the courthouse steps feeling lighter than I had in 5 years. I didn't look back at the building. There was nothing there for me anymore. My future was waiting, and it was going to be magnificent. I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address of the finest champagne bar in the city. It was time to toast to the only person who had never let me down: myself. They say that the best revenge is living well, but I disagree. The best revenge is living well on the very ground where your enemies tried to bury you. Exactly 1 year to the day after Marcus was sentenced to federal prison, I stood on a podium in front of a gleaming structure of glass and steel. It was the grand opening of the Phoenix Center, a mixed-use development complex that now dominated the skyline of the district. The irony was sweet enough to cause cavities. This land used to belong to the Brooks Family Trust. It was the crown jewel of Arthur's portfolio, the legacy he intended to pass down to his golden son. But after the scandal and the lawsuits and the restitution payments, the bank had foreclosed on the dirt. And I was the first one in line at the auction with a cashier's check and a vision. I cut the red ribbon with a pair of oversized gold scissors. The flashbulbs popped, blinding and frantic. The applause washed over me. I looked out at the crowd. There were city council members, investors, and the elite of Atlanta, who had once looked down on me at Ashley's dinner parties. Now they were clamoring to shake my hand. They didn't see a diversity hire or a lucky wife anymore. They saw a mogul. They saw the woman who had turned a family tragedy into a $50 million asset. After the ceremony, I retreated to the VIP lounge on the penthouse floor. Vance was waiting for me with 2 flutes of vintage champagne. He looked dashing in a charcoal suit, his silver fox hair catching the afternoon light. Over the last year, our relationship had evolved. It wasn't born out of need. I didn't need a savior, and he didn't need a damsel. We were equals. He respected my mind as much as he admired my resilience. We dated quietly, enjoying the peace of a relationship built on transparency and mutual ambition. To the phoenix, he said, clinking his glass against mine, and to the woman who rose from the ashes. I took a sip, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. To the ashes, I corrected him with a smile. Without them, we wouldn't have had the fertilizer to grow all this. We stood by the window looking down at the city. Somewhere out there in a medium-security facility in Alabama, Marcus was currently sitting in a 6x8 cell. I knew from the grapevine that he was working in the prison laundry, earning 12 cents an hour folding sheets. It was a far cry from the surgical theater, but at least he was finally learning the value of hard labor. Ashley was somewhere in the suburbs, living in a small rented apartment, working as a receptionist at a car dealership, trying to pay off her legal fees while seeing her children on supervised weekends. The empire of the Brooks family had been dismantled brick by brick, and I had used the rubble to pave my driveway. "Are you happy?" Sophia Vance asked, his voice soft. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw a woman who was tired but strong. A woman who had walked through fire and came out made of gold. "I am free, Vance," I said. "Happiness comes and goes, but freedom is permanent." Later that night, after the gala was over and the investors had gone home, I felt a sudden craving. It was a strange urge. I had spent the night eating caviar and truffle canapés, but all I wanted was a greasy cheeseburger and a milkshake. It was a callback to my old life. The life before the pretension of the Brooks family forced me to diet and dine only at Michelin star restaurants. I asked my driver to pull into a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. It was a brightly lit place with red vinyl booths and a smell of frying onions that hit you the moment you walked in. It was past midnight and the place was mostly empty save for a few truck drivers and college kids. I sat in a booth near the back, still wearing my white gala suit, looking completely out of place, but not caring in the slightest. I picked up the laminated menu. "I will be right with you," a voice said from behind me. It was a tired voice, flat and beaten down by a long shift. I knew that voice. I turned around slowly. The waiter was wearing a stained apron and a paper hat. He was wiping his hands on a rag, looking down at his notepad. He looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. His hair was thinning. His posture was slumped, and the arrogance that used to radiate off him was gone, extinguished by the harsh reality of minimum wage survival. "Hello, Lucas." He froze. The pen dropped from his hand, clattering onto the checkered floor. He looked up slowly, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of me. He looked at my suit, my jewelry, the aura of success that surrounded me. Then he looked down at his own grease-stained uniform. The shame that washed over his face was so potent I could almost taste it. "Sophia," he whispered. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. I just looked at him. This was the man who had gambled away his children's future. The man who had sold out his wife to save his own skin, only to find that nobody wanted to hire a snitch with a gambling problem. "I would like a double cheeseburger with bacon," I said, my voice perfectly conversational. "And a vanilla milkshake. Extra whipped cream." Lucas stood there, his mouth opening and closing. He wanted to run. I could see his legs twitching. He wanted to throw the apron down and flee into the night. But he couldn't. He needed this job. He needed the tips. He was trapped in the prison of his own making just as surely as Marcus was trapped in his. "Right away, ma'am," he choked out. He walked away, his shoulders hunched. I watched him cook my burger. I watched him pour the milkshake. I watched him serve me, placing the plates on the table with trembling hands. He couldn't look me in the eye. He was serving the woman he had once looked down upon. "Thank you, Lucas," I said. I ate my meal in silence. It was the best burger I had ever tasted. It tasted like justice. When I was finished, I wiped my mouth with the paper napkin. Lucas was hovering near the register, waiting for me to leave, praying for the encounter to be over. I pulled out my wallet. I took out a crisp $100 bill. I walked up to the counter. Lucas wouldn't look up. He was staring at the cash register keys. I placed the bill on the counter. "The meal cost $12. "Keep the change," I said. Lucas looked at the money. For a man drowning in debt, $100 was a lifeline. He reached for it, his hand hesitating. "Oh." "And Lucas," I added, leaning in close so only he could hear. He looked up, meeting my gaze for the first time. His eyes were watery red, rimmed with exhaustion and regret. "There is a note for you," I said, pointing to the bill. I had written on the border of the banknote in blue ink. Lucas squinted to read it. "Change from the house sale." I saw the realization hit him. The house I had forced him to sell. The equity I had stripped from him to pay his debt. This $100 was literally the crumbs of his former life returned to him as charity. He went pale. He looked like he might be sick. I turned and walked toward the door. The bell above the entrance chimed, announcing my departure. I stepped out into the cool night air, where my driver was waiting to take me back to my penthouse. I didn't look back at the diner. I didn't need to. I knew Lucas was standing there, clutching that $100 bill, hating me, but needing it too much to let go. That was his punishment. He had to survive on the scraps of the woman he tried to destroy. My name is Sophia. I started this journey as a victim, a wife about to be discarded, a woman underestimated by a family who thought they owned the world. I ended it as a CEO, a landlord, and the owner of my own destiny. They tried to freeze my assets, but they forgot one thing. You can't freeze fire. And I burned their whole world down to keep myself warm. If you ever find yourself sitting across a table from people who don't respect you, remember this story. Don't get mad. Get ownership. Don't scream. Get a lawyer. And never ever let them see you bleed. Make them watch you win. I got into the car and watched the city lights blur past me. The story was over. The book was closed. And the next chapter, well, that was going to be entirely up to me. and I had a feeling it was going to be expensive. The most painful lesson from this journey wasn't about money, it was about the dangerous cost of silence. For years, I allowed the Brooks family to disrespect me because I thought tolerance was the price of belonging. I was wrong. True power comes not just from financial independence, though that is your ultimate shield, but from the willingness to walk away from anyone who requires you to shrink yourself to fit into their world. We often fear that losing people will leave us empty. But as I discovered, clearing out toxicity doesn't create a void. It creates space for your authentic life to finally begin. You are not defined by who leaves you, but by who you become after they are gone. If this story of reclaiming your power resonated with you, please hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth today. Have you ever had to choose your dignity over your history? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and justice. Remember, your best revenge is your own success. See you in the next video.